The New Orleans Saints and the Green Bay Packers look to be headed towards an unhealthy competition. We've got all your injury updates before the big matchup this weekend and a little bit of land yap on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, to all you everydayers out there making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, you can always subscribe and follow for free on YouTube so you never miss the latest episodes. And of course, you can always continue the conversation one-on-one with me, take part in our exclusive film studies, Q&As, and much more by heading over and becoming a Locked On Saints insider today. Just head over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSaints to join a community I would love for you to be a part of. As always, I am your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media, your New Orleans Saints expert, credential member of the media, Saints News Network, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and here with you every single Monday through Friday, and then some on Locked On Saints. And we are here live for another episode of Locked On Saints here with Jerry, Eric, Chris, EJ, Black, Dunn, Trav, Scott. I see all y'all. Kevin, I appreciate everybody for being here, whether you're catching the show live or you're catching the show later. On today's episode, we're going to do, like I always say, a quick 10, 15 minutes, which always turns into like 45. But we're going to do a quick show here today, just getting you caught up with everything that you need to know in terms of health for the New Orleans Saints. But there's also some big injury concerns now for the Green Bay Packers. So we're going to take a look at the injury report here. But we're also going to take a look at what it's like for the Green Bay Packers to prepare for the New Orleans Saints. We oftentimes look at these matchups from one side. What's it like for the New Orleans Saints to be getting ready for the Green Bay Packers? Well, we're going to flip it, have a little bit of fun, and take a look at the Green Bay Packers side of it all as well. So, I want to start off, well, I got a question here from Scott saying that apparently Jarvis was talking a bunch of trash about the Saints. I don't know if you're talking about Jarvis Davis or if you're talking about Jarvis Landry, but in either case, I don't care. So, and that's a shot at you, Jarvis Davis. I'm coming for you, buddy. But when we look at where the New Orleans Saints are health-wise going into this game, they and the Green Bay Packers are both dealing with a lot of injury concerns, and we're seeing a few more of these injuries, particularly soft tissue injuries for the New Orleans Saints. Some hamstring injuries. You had another hamstring injury pop up today. Foster Moreau's dealing with an ankle injury. You've got hamstring for Jamal Williams. You've got a hamstring injury all of a sudden for for other players, a knee injury for Ugo Amadi. But it's not specific to the New Orleans Saints. The Green Bay Packers are dealing with their own stuff as well. So let's take a look at the injury report ahead of this Sunday's game. So we take a look here at the Saints. Big ones to note, Foster Moreau started off as DNP on Wednesday. Remember, that was an estimated injury report at that time. Started off as DNP, which means did not participate, did not practice, going to a limited participation on Thursday, and then downgraded again to DNP today. He was not out on the field today. We didn't see him out there. And then the injury report follows it up with another did not participate, did not practice designation. So never good to see the midweek downgrade. Speaking of the midweek downgrade, Paulson Adebo, the starting New Orleans Saints corner opposite Marshawn Lattimore, who has an interception from earlier on this season, another soft tissue injury, a hamstring injury, making him a midweek downgrade from participating in full on Wednesday and Thursday to not participating on Friday. Now, while we were at practice on Friday, we did see Paulson Adebo present. He just wasn't participating. So he had his helmet. He had no helmet. He was off to the side, standing and watching from the side. So we kind of figured that there would be something here on this. He is not listed as out. Neither is Foster Moreau. Foster Moreau is listed as doubtful, which means he'll very likely be out. The only player ruled out for the New Orleans Saints right now is Jamal Williams, which we already expected. The running back also dealing with the hamstring injury. Paulson Adebo, though, listed as questionable. So he's going to be one to watch. He's not the only New Orleans Saint listed as questionable, however. As we go back to the injury report, we look at Ugo Amadi, who is also listed as questionable. He was limited in practice on Thursday, limited today. He was on the field today, though, so that is good news to see him back out there. We watched him kind of get tended to on Thursday, get his knee taped, things like that, but he was back out there. A couple of players that are looking good, though, Taysom Hill, Kendre Miller, both of which are coming back from injuries. They've been full participation throughout the majority of, in Taysom Hill's case, and the entirety of in Kendre Miller's case when it comes to practices. But both of them have no game designation, meaning that they are good to go. Similarly, Jordan Howden has no game day designation, but he did pop up on the injury report with a finger injury listed as full participation, however. So it seems like everything's okay there. Maybe it's just like a jammed finger or something like that. Even those small things you kind of have to report if you're the New Orleans Saints and if you're an NFL team. So that's the way that that all kind of unfolds. But it looks like Jordan Howden, Taysom Hill, Kendre Miller, all good to go as we expected. And we know that Jordan Howden is going to be stepping into some increased role this weekend. Many of us expect him to be starting. He kind of let it slip. Hey, it's going to be my first start during his locker room conversation with us, which you can find over at saints.media if you want to check that out. But everybody kind of assumes that Jordan Howden is going to be the starter in place of Marcus May, who's out. The big thing, though, is that if Paulson Adebo is out, what do you do if you're the New Orleans Saints? Do you move Alontae Taylor to the outside and have somebody else play in the slot? Well, that would be easier to do if you didn't have Ugo Amadi out. So what I think the Saints will do here is that if Paulson Adebo is out, they'll keep Alontae Taylor in the slot, and they'll put Isaac Yiadom in the on the outside playing corner. They have a lot of faith in him. They like him, and I think that you've already seen a couple of snaps this year in which Marshawn Lattimore has had to be off the field for a snap or a couple of snaps or whatever, and they turned to Isaac each time. And actually, the first time that they did that, he broke up a pass that Marcus May intercepted in that Tennessee Titans game. So I think that tells you what you need to know in terms of what to expect for how the secondary is going to pan out. So I would expect if Paulson Adebo isn't able to play, which we still have to see, but if Paulson Adebo isn't able to play, for it to be Marshawn Lattimore, Isaac Yiadom on the outside, and then you have Alontae Taylor staying in the slot, and then a combination of Jordan Howden as well as Tyrann Mathieu at safety. That's what I would expect here. Let's take a look real quick at the Green Bay Packers side of it all. David Bakhtiari, who has not practiced at all this week, listed as questionable, and Elgton Jenkins, dealing with a knee injury, also hasn't practiced at all this week, listed as out. So if that happens and both of those players do not participate, that means that the entire left side of the offensive line for the Packers, their starters will be out, and there will be replacement level players in there. Rashawn Gary looks good to go. Aaron Jones is questionable. He's been elevated to limited. We'll see. I expect him to play. We saw a midweek downgrade for Christian Watson, and then he popped back up with a hamstring injury. Lucas Van Ness has been limited with an elbow injury all week. The bottom line is that neither of these teams are very healthy. Even the punter is on the injury report for the Green Bay Packers. And then one big thing to look out for here is that Jaire Alexander, midweek downgrade from full participation to limited, and therefore questionable for this game with a back injury. So that's pretty big for the Green Bay Packers, and therefore big for the New Orleans Saints as well, because if Jaire Alexander isn't able to go, or if Jaire Alexander is in any way hampered, that's a big time matchup problem for the Green Bay Packers up against a very talented wide receiver room for the New Orleans Saints. So that is a huge one to watch out for. And speaking of getting ready and dealing with the matchup problems of the New Orleans Saints, defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers, Joe Barry, compared getting ready for the New Orleans Saints offense to actually having to prep for two different offenses. What does he mean by that? And how does that work in the New Orleans Saints' favor? Let's get to that as we continue on and wrap up this live episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at Game Time. If you don't have your tickets yet for Sunday's game, don't you worry. You can get them over at Game Time all the way down to the day of the event. That's how dope Game Time is. If you're like me and you don't want to plan everything out, you don't want to spend a bunch of money early, you want to wait and kind of see how things go, Game Time lets you do all that spontaneous planning. Maybe you got a date you want to take out. You want to maybe go to a theater show or a comedy show or a music concert, something like that. Game Time has it all, including deals all the way down to the day of the event, whatever event it is that you're looking for. And you can see your view from the seats before you purchase them, so no surprises when you show up at the venue. So snag the tickets without the stress over with the Game Time app. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. I use DoorDash all the time. I'm going to use DoorDash again tonight. If you're my Dasher, holla at me. Say what's up. I absolutely love it. DoorDash is my way to where I ain't got to cook. Especially on a night like this, I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning to fly to fly up north to get ready for this game on Sunday. So you best believe I'm not trying to cook this evening. So I'm gonna have DoorDash bring me my food, be able to relax, get everything I need, get my nourishment, all that, and then be able to get up to bring you the best coverage possible. So you can thank DoorDash for all of that. And right now, you should try out DoorDash if you haven't already, because you can get 50% off of your first DoorDash order up to $20 value when you use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and 0 delivery fees on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app from the App Store, enter promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for 50% off of your first order at DoorDash. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up this live episode of Locked On Saints with a quick look at the complications that come with getting ready for the New Orleans Saints offense. We were just talking about, Jaire Alexander potentially not being available for this game. He's questionable going in, a midweek downgrade with a back injury. So either he's going to be able to play, but dealing with that injury, or they might end up not playing him knowing that they have a division game against the Detroit Lions just like 4 days later. I don't know how they're going to do that. Most of the time, teams don't really look ahead like that. But when you've got a division game, maybe that's something you pay attention to. I don't know. I'll let the Green Bay Packers worry about that. That ain't a decision that I have to worry about. I just get to talk in front of this here microphone. So when we look at where the Green Bay Packers have some complications when it comes to getting ready for the New Orleans Saints offense, there's a lot of things to point out, right? I know the New Orleans Saints offensive line is the big headliner, and they're going to go as far as their offensive line will take them. But if that offensive line continues to take its steps forward, the Saints offense gets more and more dangerous from a bunch of different areas of the field every single week, as long as the offensive line is creating either in the run game or buying the time that it needs to in the passing game for Derek Carr to be able to distribute the ball. But think about it, right? You've got Kendre Miller in this game. You've got Tony Jones Jr. in this game. You've got, Kendre Miller making his debut in this game. So it's a bit of a different pace at running back all of a sudden for the New Orleans Saints. You've got Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Michael Thomas. What do you do in terms of defending all of those guys? Where do you put your best guys? Do you shadow? Do you play sides? Like, how is it that you're going to defend? And then if you're opening up the seams with your cover 3, cover 4 heavy approach, then there's an opportunity there for guys like Juwan Johnson, Jimmy Graham. And then if we don't see Foster Moreau, maybe one of the other younger guys from the practice squad gets elevated to help out in run blocking, but could potentially, like a guy like Tommy Huddleston, he's a former basketball player. So can you get them out there and say, hey, go try them hops out, son? So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But the one name I didn't mention in all of that is Taysom Hill. And the reason why I saved Taysom Hill for last here is because Taysom Hill is the one that has the Green Bay Packers looking at the New Orleans Saints offense and going, wow, we got to prepare for 2 offenses. So what do they mean by that? Well, there's the Derek Carr side of the offense in terms of making sure that they're ready for the passing game and distribution of a Derek Carr, who's a very good pre-snap quarterback, who makes sound decisions, who, oftentimes doesn't throw interceptions, and when he does, takes full accountability for them and usually bounces right back. That can extend some plays, all of the things that Derek Carr does well. But then you've got Taysom Hill, who comes in, and all of a sudden, you have to be ready for the zone read. You have to be ready for the QB power. You have to be ready for the read option. You have to be ready for him to throw. You have to be ready for everything. And you can't figure it out just by looking at the huddle. Well, you kind of can. And I'll tell you how you can figure it out looking at the huddle in a way that's like, I'm not tipping anybody off. It's pretty obvious. But when Taysom Hill comes into the huddle, you don't really know, like, is he the outside receiver? Is he the slot receiver? Is he lining up in line at tight end? Is he going to be at quarterback? He's going to be in the backfield now. The other thing that gives away that he's for sure at quarterback is if Derek Carr is also not in the huddle. That's not revolutionary. That's not a big tip-off. That's how football works. So that's the one and only thing that really gives you a look in terms of all that. But they can have, and they did this last week, Derek Carr line up out wide, and then they end up treating Taysom Hill like a wildcat, basically, like it's a wildcat formation. And what we saw last week actually was a situation where they snapped to Taysom Hill in the red zone within the 5. He breaks out towards the right on a QB power, and Derek Carr eventually broke away and could have potentially caught a touchdown pass from Taysom Hill. Is that something that the New Orleans Saints look to do later on down the line this year? Derek Carr has already openly said he really wants to catch a touchdown pass from Taysom Hill. So now I've discussed this a little bit on the show already. If you caught Friday morning show, you've heard a little bit about this. But I asked Dennis Allen this afternoon a little bit about, like, have you ever had to prepare for anything like this and how unique is it? And he said it's very unique. And he highlighted the fact that Taysom Hill lines up in all these different places makes it even more challenging because, again, you don't really know where Taysom Hill is going to line up until he lines up. And so the defense has to adjust to that. The defense can't treat Taysom Hill like, oh, well, he's definitely going to line up at quarterback and then send out a personnel group for that. So you have to match personnel. You have to do all this stuff. Like it creates a lot of turmoil for an opposing defense. Now, when you have an opposing defense that could potentially have their top cornerback hampered, is already without a safety, all these other pieces, that's something you want to take advantage of if you're the New Orleans Saints. So I'm very much looking forward to see how the Saints end up game planning for this game. And I will bring you an episode discussing all of it from Lambeau Field, because that's how I roll. But I do think that with that additional wrinkle, and now the Green Bay Packers having a little bit of a health struggle, all these other things, that it puts the New Orleans Saints just a little bit closer into the category of, yeah, they can win this game. And this is coming from the guy that picked them to lose, right? Like I picked the Green Bay Packers to win this game back when the schedule released and everything. And so I'm all about where this all happens. And if you look around the NFC South, this is a potential separation game for the New Orleans Saints, right? Like they're going up against the Green Bay Packers, who more and more look like an even match. Or even a Saints advantage. Meanwhile, you have the Falcons that are going to go up against the Lions. The Lions they're fricked off, right? Because they lost that game last week after winning a big game to the Kansas City Chiefs, or against the Kansas City Chiefs, to open the entire NFL season. And then you've got the Bucs, who have to deal with the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. Like, this is a real opportunity for the New Orleans Saints to get an early lead in their division. If they start off 3-0 while the rest of the division goes down to 2-1, 1-2, or 0-3 in the Carolina Panthers case, who aren't even going to be able to start Bryce Young this week. It's going to be the Andy Dalton show in Carolina. And we know how the Andy Dalton show in Carolina, or at least against Carolina, went last year. There's a lot of that to where the Saints really have an opportunity here to separate. And then they play against the Bucs the following week, which is a tough defense, a talented offense, a Baker Mayfield that you never really know what you're going to get. So the Saints really have an opportunity here to where if they can go 3-0 and then host a division rival who is probably coming off of a Monday Night Football loss. We'll see. Maybe they surprise the world to beat the Philadelphia Eagles, but it's hard to see that happening without seeing it happen, right? That puts the New Orleans Saints in a really, really good position early on in the year to have a comfortable lead and have a little bit of cushion when it comes to the NFC South. So it's a big game for the New Orleans Saints. It's not just a game against some common opponent. This is a big-time opportunity for them to create some distance. And the more that these injuries pile on, the more that the Saints maintain their game plan, and the more that the offensive line performs, and the more that the New Orleans Saints can execute their offense from the first half as opposed to just in the second half. And if this defense continues to do what it does, I mean, this is big. This is a big opportunity for the New Orleans Saints, and I can't wait to see how it all goes. So I will. We're gonna wrap up here. I'm recording another episode for you for tomorrow morning. I appreciate all you everydayers here for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with an In Case You Missed It episode. I'm going to give you my 5 biggest takes from the week, just to get you all recapped from the week and get you ready for Sunday's game. That way you have everything that you need ahead of that matchup. Keep an eye out. We'll get game day elevations. I suspect we'll see one of the tight ends elevated, and then maybe Jonathan Abram elevated as well. And we'll see exactly where they go. But with Ty Summers now on the active roster, Tony Jones Jr. in the active roster, that's kind of covered for them. So, I'll put out a short on YouTube and all this other stuff for all of that. So we'll have a lot. We'll still have a lot over the course of the weekend. And then, of course, post-game, right after the game live, or not right after the game, after pressers, locker room, all that live to get y'all caught up. So I appreciate y'all. As always, make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Big thank you to everybody here in the chat, everybody catching the show live, everybody catching the show later. I appreciate y'all very, very much for making me a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.